Hi, welcome to my architecture and technology series. Today we'll talk about the various flavors of architects. Uh, you could probably put it as various types of architects. Now, are these the only types of architects that could be out there? Definitely no. It's probably one way to roll out various ways in which you can categorize the architecture space and have different designations for different roles an architect would perform at various points in time, right? So, what are the various types? We'll cover about technical architect, solution architect, enterprise architect, enterprise solution architect, and principal architect, right? But before this, if you look at this group of what you call as architects, there's somewhere from which you need to grow up and come in and become an architect, right? uh, we'll probably touch that part first so that we understand what it means to be an architect, at least in the application development, software application development space. And then from there on, we'll look at what each of these roles will essentially perform. All right. Now, sometime back when I was running the architecture academy, we formed an architecture academy in an IT services firm. It was around 2007 when we formed this academy. The purpose was to take up good budding architects, promising techies, and people who have a penchant for solutioning, and then groom them to be good, successful architects from within the organization, rather than having to recruit people from outside. Thereby, one is obviously to save cost and whole host of logistics issues. The second thing is to also ensure that people with real talent for problem solving for architecture and technology are given the right opportunities to grow from within the company, and they don't get stifled in some kind of a maintenance project, right? So, what are the things that among various tests and interviews and that used to happen? The essential thing would boil down to something like this, right? Give that person a problem to solve. So you're looking at a person at a technical lead level, okay, a person who understands what is design. So he looks at the architecture already given, or probably that is supplied by the customer, and then he takes the requirements and then he gives out a detailed design so that developers can then take it up and implement it. All right. Now here, uh, okay, so you give a problem when you say give some functional requirements basically, and say this is you develop a small business application. So there's a customer, so there is a vendor, there is this processing that needs to happen. Can you just come up with an overall design over there? Now there are two types of design that I've seen, right? One is the classic pre-sales design, what is something that I've always frowned upon. That is, you come up with this so-called architecture where you have presentation layer, business layer, data access layer, database, right? And then you vertically stack monitoring, logging, and a couple of other boxes. That's not an architect. Anybody can do that, right? So the essence that needs to we test out is whether that person understands the problem, and that person is able to decompose this problem and come up with various solution components. Okay, let's say we say that this needs to be stored somewhere and documents needs to be stored, but it's able to think through and say, oh, probably document can be stored in file storage, or we need to have some kind of document management system, and then the database could be separate, or we could have a distributed database, and these are solution things. For email we could have one more application for integration. He basically looks at this problem, decomposes the problem, and comes up with solution elements. That's essentially what this architecture and design is all about. Now, the critical line that divides a good designer from a good architect would be the next set of requirements typically we would give, which is okay. Now, this is for 50 users, is what we used to say. This is for 50 users. This is what is going to be used. Application is going to come up with a design for this. Okay, he comes up with a design, and then we say now this is now going to be opened up to the public network, and you will have about 80,000 users using this, out of which 30,000 users could access this concurrently or at the same time, right? Now, if this person is all about why should my design change just because the number of users have increased, then it means that person needs a lot more grooming, and is probably going to go through a course, 6 months mentorship and all that before he can become an architect. But if the person is able to think through and then It's not even that he has to come up with a solution then and there. It's just that if he's able to think through and say, oh my god, so many users are going to come in, so probably I can scale out my application layer. But then with the database, but the database handle all that load. What do I do about the database? I'm not so sure. He's able to think through from that perspective. And then and at least he understands that yes, there's fundamentally a problem where there could be a potential bottleneck somewhere in this component tree and this and these various layers, and that needs to be resolved. Then he's halfway there, and then it's easy to train that person, and that person really has a potential to become an architect. So that's essentially what it is, right? So you get the functional requirements, you're able to decompose it, and then you come up with solution elements. Good enough. But if you're able to take the non-functional requirements, which is about performance and scalability and security and all of that, and then based on the changes in the non-functional requirements, you're able to adapt your solution to adhere to the revised non-functional requirements, then you are truly an architect. All right. Now, having defined what an architect is, let's also look at various types. Again, like I said, this is based on my experience with the IT service company where I was heading the architecture services there. But there could be various other flavors. But whatever you want to call these various types, these would essentially be the roles in the application development space. Technical architect would be the person who understands, say, Java or Microsoft in depth, okay, and he can come up with a complete solution that can address both functional and non-functional requirements and be able to give to a developer. Okay, that's at the next stage would come a solution architect. Two categories of solution architects: in the horizontal space and the vertical space. In the horizontal space, a solution architect would be who understands multiple technology domains. He understands Java, he understands the database domain, he might also understand data warehousing and business intelligence, for example, right? So he understands multiple technology domains. That's a solution architect in the horizontal space, right? The solution architect vertical space is about, say, an insurance specific solution architect or banking specific solution architect. For example, from an insurance perspective, he has, LOMA, CPCU certifications. He understands the domain in and out. He might be a Guidewire Claim Center solutions architect. He might understand EBO for core insurance processing. All these, he understands all these business systems, or he is in the ERP space where he understands SAP and Oracle Financials and all of those things, right? So these are all solution architects in the vertical space. Okay. So when you receive a request for proposal from a customer for an overall solution, the solution architect, either in the horizontal domain or the vertical domain, would essentially take the first crack at it and then rope in the appropriate technical architect and so on, right? So when it comes to enterprise architecture, there are two parts to it which we are divided. One is pure play enterprise architecture and enterprise solution architecture. Now, enterprise solution architecture is the next level from solution architecture, which is about you designing a complete technology platform for an enterprise. So, comprising multiple systems. For example, for one of the customers we had, which was in the insurance space in India, there were about 40 different systems that had to be integrated and the solution given, because it was all, so financials had to be covered, human resources management had to be covered, and it was all about core insurance processing. Then it was about payments and receipts and communication, so you had core almost like 14 different systems, which entire thing has to be stitched together and an end-to-end integrated solution had to be formed. That's the role of an enterprise solutions architect, right? Enterprise architecture, on the other hand, pure play enterprise architecture. In fact, we used to have a separate horizontal for that, which is it's really about the person specializing in things like he understands the Zachman framework, he understands TOGAF, right? And then he's able to come and look at the entire enterprise and lay out and say, and gives out the complete visual aspect of how the enterprise IT is completely organized. What are the various systems, how they interface with each other, what are various sources of data that they interact with, what are various assets, right? All your assets completely visualized surfer stuff with clear the visuals related to how they all interact with each other. What would be the, what you think would be, what is the current state of the enterprise architecture as per your vision, what is the future state of the enterprise architecture, right? It's all about enterprise IT, the various assets, the as is, the to be, and how the whole thing visualized, right? So that's about enterprise level. But pure play enterprise architecture and enterprise solution architecture, right? And the next level is principal. Principal is essentially the person who owns it, right? For example, when I was a senior principal architect of the architecture technology service, what all do I do is, in addition to solutioning, which one by 50% of my time, I would look at how the architecture service need to be structured, what are the various services we will offer, right? For example, we might offer, Java solutioning, .NET solutioning, data warehouse and business intelligence, then we enterprise application integration, farming and say an integration competency center for customers. So there's various services, from an architecture standpoint that we will offer. So what are the various services that we will offer? What kind of people to staff with? What are various training to be done? What will be the various KPIs as far as the various architects are concerned internally? From a customer standpoint, how would we measure an architect's progress? And from our immediate customers, but which would be other projects within the organization, what would be the KPIs through which the architects would be measured on? What kind of visibility should the projects have in terms of architecture? All these kind of things. So, which is about forming on almost running this architecture services like a small startup, so to speak, right? So that's essentially about being a principal architect, right? So this, in essence, guys, is all about what is an architect and what are various types of architects. Now there could be a lot of subcategories within that, and it would be different names for that. But these broadly would be the kind of roles that you might expect to face up, as you grow up in this architecture space. Thanks for watching.